Another story you're waking up to this morning. It has been announced in the past few hours that the former US Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger, has died at the age of 100. That news put out by his consulting firm, Kissinger Associates. It said the American diplomat passed away at his home in Connecticut. A giant of the Republican Party, Henry Kissinger served as US Secretary of State under Presidents Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford, becoming one of the most controversial figures of US foreign policy in the 20th century. Well, let's talk to our US correspondent, Mark Stone, live from Washington. Hi, Mark. So, an incredibly powerful figure on the world stage, past those two presidencies, but one not without his critics.
Yes, never mind elder statesman. He was America's eldest statesman, 100 years old, a man born in 1923 in Germany. His gravelly voice was his trademark, and his accent reflected his background, as I say, born in Germany, but a refugee to America during Nazi Germany. He fled in 1938, came to America, and then really did live the American dream, rising to be America's top diplomat, Secretary of State under Richard Nixon, and then under Gerald Ford as well. He survived the controversies of Nixon, and it was through his leadership as Secretary of State that he moulded foreign policy for decades. It was under his statesmanship that the diplomatic relations with China came and have been sustained. He made a secret trip to Beijing in 1971, and then as Secretary of State, he forged the path for Richard Nixon himself to meet Chairman Mao. I think that was perhaps his greatest foreign policy achievement, but there were others as well. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for bringing to an end, or beginning to bring to an end, the Vietnam War. But as you say, controversies as well. There are many who see him as a war criminal, as a man who should have been in The Hague, as a man who aligned himself with America's allies from Cambodia to Chile, and to the atrocities that those countries, that took place in those countries, backed, some say, many say, by American leadership of the time. There have been some statements that have come through overnight. This news broke late in America, but George W. Bush, one of pretty much every president since Nixon that has used or has valued his influence, shall we say. Bush said, "America has lost one of the most dependable and distinctive voices on foreign affairs with the passing of Henry Kissinger. I've long admired the man who fled the Nazis as a young boy from a Jewish family and then fought them in the United States Army." He goes on to say, when he later became Secretary of State, his appointment as a former refugee said as much about his greatness as it did about America's greatness. He worked in the administrations of 2 presidents and counseled many more. "I am grateful," so says George W. Bush, "for that service and advice, but I am most grateful for his friendship. Laura and I will miss his wisdom, his charm and his humour, and we will always be thankful for the contributions of Henry Kissinger." You know, just 4 months ago, 100-year-old Henry Kissinger was in Beijing meeting President Xi Jinping. That alone, I think, gives you a sense of how his finger was on the pulse right until the very end. A man who I was listening to a podcast that he gave to The Economist just a few months ago, and it was so clear through that gravelly voice, through that German accent, that he was a man that was still absolutely up to speed with every twist and turn of global events. And, you know, it's also fascinating to reflect that those challenges that he faced all those decades ago, whether they be peace and coexistence in the Middle East, whether it be relations with the then Soviet Union, now with Russia, or indeed relations with China. They are all still challenges that America and the world is dealing with. And one of the last issues that he reflected on just a couple of months ago was artificial intelligence. That, I think, gives you a sense of how this man, right up until the very end, was on the pulse with the challenges that we all face.
Yeah, he was. All right, Mark, thank you very much indeed.